This is Barrie City Hall, and just 5 minutes from it, one of city's largest developments is proposed at the old fairgrounds. The land is surrounded by Highway 400, rail tracks, and mostly single-family homes. Greenworld Construction, which owns a 55-acre plot of land at 175 and 199 Essa Rd and 50 Wood Street, plan to develop more than 4,000 residential units. These include high-rises, mixed-use high-rises, townhouses, and commercial spaces, along with a designated school block. Hi, this is Deepak, and you are watching Simcoe Community Media. Last week, after more than 1.5 hours of discussion, debate, and deputations, Barrie City Council voted to forward the zoning proposal to the province for consideration under the Community Infrastructure and Housing Accelerator, also known as CIHA process. Barrie's prominent businessman and the founder of Busch Systems, Busch, who is also the head of Vision Barrie, raised concerns about the proposed development of the fairgrounds property. He highlighted issues like school land allocation confusion and impact on the curling crop. Busch criticized the focus on short-term projects over long-term community benefits, arguing that current plans featuring 6 to 10-story buildings and elevated green spaces do not foster community engagement.
This is Mumbai, India, with 1 billion people. And we say we don't have enough space. Mumbai's got 20 million people, and they put in tall buildings and urban villages. So if Mumbai's got the space with 20 million, we have the space to make urban villages. Why am I here? And based on the stuff that you've gotten, a lot of work's gone into what's being presented to you guys. Why? Because when you see the iceberg, you have to get in the front of the ship and start waving. And this is the place where we set the standard for all of the high-density key developments that are going to come down the pipe. We have to have people, places, livable places. This is the time to make a decision. Are we going to be followers? Are we going to be the cities that just put in housing because the province wants us to? Or are we going to keep the community that makes us really special in Barrie? This is a place of community, and we're about to lose it.
He advocated for a development strategy that prioritizes ground-level community spaces and urban villages. He called for a pause on the project to reassess its direction towards creating pedestrian-friendly and livable spaces. His deputation was very well received by the council members. Barrie Curling Club is located on this 55-acre land, and its representative, Norman Speake, stated that the club is not opposing the proposed development, but expressed concerns about CIHA process. He highlighted unresolved issues between the Barrie Curling Club and the developer, particularly regarding the club's footprint in the development plan. Ryan Windle, representing Diagram Developments on behalf of the Greenworld Construction, expressed support for forwarding their zoning proposal to the province for consideration under CIHA process. He emphasized the project's alignment with city strategic growth and densification objective, highlighting its potential to add over 4,000 housing units near Allendale GO station. Windle said the project is just a proof of concept for the zoning proposal and the future applications expected to address design specifics. Please refer to the timestamps in the description to jump to the relevant section of the video.
We will now move to deputations. There were 3 deputation requests received from individuals wishing to speak on motion 24-G046 concerning the Community Infrastructure and Housing Accelerator order for 175, 199 Essa Rd and 50 Wood Street in Ward 8. In accordance with the city's procedural bylaw, each deputant will be permitted to a maximum of 5 minutes to speak. Once your name is called, please approach the podium and for your deputation. I will now call upon Busch on behalf of Vision Barrie to deliver a deputation. Mr. Busch, I know you've been here before. You have 5 minutes.
Hi, me again. So, with regards to the fairgrounds property, I think, oh, that's big. I think we've gotten a little distracted. We've got a big issue with the schools, not having the proper land for that, the allocations, confusion over who might get that, or if they get that, or who locates. And then also a deserving distraction of the curling club. But I think we're so looking in the future here with the other things that we have to deal with in the CIHA that we're not looking at what sort of development we're actually getting for Barrie, which I think that the high-fiving 10 years from now, when we've got the school sorted and we've got a development we don't want, won't be the same happy ending that we're looking for. So I'm here to speak on that, and to what we were presented about 6 months ago. So prior to the CIHA, multiple buildings, high story, and don't get me wrong, I'm not against density and I'm not against profitability for realtors. I'm in favor of both of those, but I think we can have that, and I think we can have a great city at the same time. And right now what we're getting is something that's not going to create a great city. So that is what was presented about 6 months ago. That's what's being presented this time. I've carved the school off because it creates a false sense of what is actually there. We are looking at 6th floor, 10th floor elevated green spaces. These are concrete and we're in Canada and it's by the highway. Community does not happen here. Community happens on the ground floor. You see a nice green streak through the middle, running between the big buildings. That's a 4-lane road, okay? That will not be a shaded tree-lined road in Canada. The perspective of what this is actually going to be in real life when we get it, we are going to regret it. We are going to regret this. I'm not against the whole development. It's fixable. It can be great, okay? But it needs to have community. And here's a comparison of what we were first pitched that we weren't that crazy about, and here's what we got the second time with the CIHA. You can see that it's actually gone in the opposite direction as far as actually having a quality of life and space. Again, I'm not against that if the ground floor is activated. I was down at a session in Florida, Seaside, Florida, kind of the home of the new urbanism, and they were actually saying in their urban villages, they regretted being 2 or 3 stories tall. Okay, they should be 4 or 5 stories tall. I think the center of this, where we've got townhouses, could be 4 or 5 stories tall. I think there could be more density, providing we can mitigate the traffic. This is Mumbai, India, with 1 billion people. And we say we don't have enough space. Mumbai's got 20 million people, and they put in tall buildings and urban villages. So if Mumbai's got the space with 20 million, we have the space to make urban villages. Why am I here? And based on the stuff that you've got, and a lot of work's gone into what's being presented to you guys, why? Because when you see the iceberg, you have to get on the front of the ship and start waving. And this is the place where we set the standard for all of the high-density key developments that are going to come down the pipe. We have to have people, places, livable places. This is the time to make a decision. Are we going to be followers? Are we going to be the cities that just put in housing because the province wants us to? Or are we going to keep the community that makes us really special in Barrie? This is a place of community, and we are about to lose it. If we do development without urban villages and local jobs, we are going to spend a fortune on road building. We know this can't be mitigated. We know this by Mapleview. Okay, and you can say Ann Street can take this traffic, not any better than Bayview can. Okay, we know that doesn't work. It's going to cost us a fortune in building roads. Safety and policing. No activation on the main street, no eyes on the main street, no safety. Reduce property values. This will have to be a price sale because you're not selling the quality of life. Okay, so that reduces the values of these properties. And we think the builder would know this and want to get maximum for their properties. Mental, emotional health and addiction. Oh God, 38 seconds. 35% of people suffer depression now from separation from society. Climate change, affordability, because you have to have cars, urban decay from monobuild, happiness of buried residents, city reputation. Oh, there's a bunch more. Okay. There's 16 reasons why we should have that. Action needed. Delay the CIHA for 60 days. Work with the developer for a robust pedestrian urban village. Move the center road to the outside.
10 seconds,
Mr. Community with center road through the middle. A dynamic, inclusive plan for public transportation, and then come back and approve it or not approve it then. An additional add, because you can throw in last minute things.
Thank you.
Okay? Allocate money for, to city staff for transportation plan, including highway rail and an urban village plan.
Thank you. Thank you for your deputation. Any questions? Councilor Morales.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Thompson. Mr. Busch, that was possibly the most effective deputation for or against a development, and I don't think you're taking either approach of for or against. That was the most effective deputation.
Give them more density.
That was the most effective deputation I have personally witnessed in 9 years in regards to a development application. To further increase my understanding, if IT could pull up the last slide that was on. And let's go one further. So the next one. Oh, that was it. Oh, you don't have a slide after that?
No.
No, okay. Could we go to the slide with the proposal 1 and proposal 2, IT? So probably like 7 back. There we go, right there. Thank you. I love the fact that you cut out the school. That is extremely effective. That is allowing us to understand and process information better as decision makers. And I couldn't agree more with you. So I guess I'm asking to staff, and this is unusual, but the timing of this whole thing is unusual. CIHA is unusual, so I'm going to ask an unusual question to an unusual process. How can council, and there's only so many things we can control, how can we, as the 11 members here, vote in favor as appropriate to get to a closer vision of what Mr. Busch was talking about? And it's not necessarily proposal number 2, and not necessarily, at least in that built form, proposal number 1, but addressing some of the concerns, specifically with the massing and how it's spread out with more of a urban village, public square. There's many names for it. Pick the name that you like better, and the built form. So I think I'm going to direct that to staff initially. I'll maybe start with Ms. Banfield and go from there.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, to Council Morales. Ultimately, we'd have to process a planning application like this. What Mr. Busch is not. He's suggesting something that's not before council. So you're not actually being asked to make a recommendation based on what Mr. Busch is presenting. You're being asked to make a recommendation or make a decision based on what the applicant, the owner of the property, is requesting. Okay. For tonight, there's really no other advice that I can provide.
Okay, no, perfect. So the applicant, I believe, proposal number 2 is what they're proposing. And CIHA, again, a CIHA process, at least at this stage, it's not a full rezoning. So it's not like tomorrow the property is rezoned with, let the setback be this, let the height be this, let the UPH be this. So maybe for those watching here, we have a bit of an audience, and I know a lot of people have been following this file. If council votes in favor tonight, like what is being approved, and how much control do we have once it comes back?
Through you, Deputy Mayor Thompson, to Council Morales. So this evening, the motion is to direct staff to present this information to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing for his consideration, his review, his approval.
Thank you. And follow up, Ms. Banfield, what does the minister approve? Does he approve the plan as proposed by the applicant? Does he approve the idea of it being developed in a general concept and then sends it back to the municipality, at which point we decide setbacks and public open spaces and various things?
Through you, Deputy Mayor Thompson, to Council Morales. So the minister can make any decision. They could change what the applicant is provided, but some of the elements that you're talking about really would be cemented into a zoning bylaw. Height, setbacks, upper floor step backs, massing, height, all those sorts of things would be part of a zoning decision.
Okay. Lots of trusts and lots of these nuances. Okay. Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Busch. The city of Barrie doesn't deserve your level of energy and commitment, but we will take it, and we need to get this right. So I will listen to my colleagues if they have any questions on this.
Thank you, Councilor Morales. I have Councilor Hamilton.
Thank you, and through you, Deputy Mayor Thompson. I'm also trying to understand sort of the process and how much flexibility we're going to have if this goes through the CHIA process and the ministry comes back. So what I'm understanding is once they come back, there'll be very little possibility for us to introduce any elements that were presented tonight by Mr. Busch, correct, for the most part? That urban design type concept at that point would be too late to really make those substantial changes that would be required?
Through you, Deputy Mayor Thompson, to Councillor Hamilton, that's a good summary for sure. Like there's an element of returning the draft plan of subdivision and site plan details to be done at the City of Barrie, but applications would then be implementing the zoning that the minister may or may not see fit to issue.
Okay, and just to follow up, if I may, were there any conversations between staff and the developer about introducing more of the urban design initially? Was there, any resistance from the developer? Like, I'm not sure how the city sort of approves things, and I mean, this is a development I think we want to get right, and I just want to know, is this sort of a concept that the city has been pursuing with developers, or just sort of a new concept that we really haven't, given as much time and energy as maybe we should have?
Through you, Deputy Mayor Thompson, to Councillor Hamilton, there definitely in any planning application is a lot of back and forth and dialogue between city staff and the applicant, technical reviewers. That goes back and forth for quite some time usually before a recommendation report comes to council. In this case, choosing to look at this CHIA route really removes that part of the process.
Okay, I'm struggling a little bit. I'm going to be totally honest with this. I'm supportive of the urban village design. I don't know how practical it is, how feasible it is, how realistic it is. Is it something the developer can even, afford to do? I'm reluctant to now move forward with CHIA and thinking that we have no options once this is approved to even look at introducing any elements. So I feel like we're at the 9th hour here, and I'm sort of really having difficulty about the best way forward, because we don't want to screw this up. I mean, this is massive, and it has such potential, and I don't want to get 10 to 20 years down the road and be like, oh, I was part of the council that screwed that piece up. A question to you, Mr. Busch. Have you had any conversations with the developer? And in your experience, and maybe also Ms. Banfield, if you can pitch in, from a cost perspective, the things you're talking about and presenting that look wonderful, is there really, any practicality? I'll ask you first if you've met with a developer and the practicality from a cost perspective, and then Ms. Banfield, I'd love your input in terms of your expertise from a cost perspective, if this is really even, doable.
I did have some back and forth with the developer, with Abu, way back, and then with the urgings at council and from councillors, I did reach out after the last, and by text, and I didn't hear anything back. So I offered my services to communicate and try and work on it together, which gives me grave concern, because usually during the sales process, people are the most amenable to talking. And this is entirely feasible. In fact, I'm recommending a higher density. Like, if we have an urban village where people don't have to drive for things, they don't have to drive to work. Yes, some people will, but you take a lot of that traffic off of the road, it can go denser, and it can be 5-story townhouses rather than 2-story and 3-story. Like, you can increase the density and make it more viable for the developer. There's really not a downside for the developer. And in fact, if they do this properly, the standard in big cities is for every point on your walkability score, the property value goes up by $3,000. So right now the walkability score is 35 in that neighborhood. So if they create an area with a walkability score of 90, it's going to add tremendous value to their retail prices. Otherwise, they're going to have to sell, with what they're building right now, they're going to have to sell on price.
Okay, and then if I could just redirect to you, Ms. Banfield, to get your sort of thoughts and experience working with developers and obviously your expertise in this area from a practicality point of view, and what's your standpoint?
Through you, Deputy Mayor Thompson, to Councillor Hamilton, what I can just share is that the performas and what makes sense for each site is different. It all factors into what people pay for the property and what they, like, it's very complex. So, you know, fundamentally, we expect that when people bring in an application, it's because they've run their numbers, so to speak, and they know what can make the site work. That's certainly a lot of the things that we hear when we have those conversations. But again, I would suggest that it's very complicated and each site is different, and I don't necessarily think that it's an easy thing to say right this minute.
Okay, so given that, and through you, final question, I don't want to put you on the spot, but would your direction or thoughts to council still be we should proceed with the CHIA at this point in time, that we've, you know, had tons of conversation with the developer, you're comfortable with what's being proposed here? I guess I'm just looking for some encouragement that stay the path, because I'm hesitant. I'm nervous at this point. I'm thinking we might want to take a look at our process here and make sure we've got it right before the ministry comes back and we have no control any further.
Through you, Deputy Mayor Thompson, to Councillor Hamilton, certainly when we had these first conversations, I was very clear with council, you would not be getting back a technical planning report on this CHIA process like you would for any other development application. So no, staff haven't done a technical review, staff haven't issued technical comments, we haven't had those back and forth conversations because we were following the direction of council to move forward with processing a CHIA.
Thank you for that, and I will be fully transparent. I'm learning as I go too with the CHIA process and it being new. I think we're all sort of learning with the CHIA process. My other hesitancy with the CHIA is, again, there doesn't seem to be any timelines, right? We have no idea how long this could sit with ministry. Is it 6 months? Is it a year? The seniors residents, we haven't heard anything back from that process. So I don't know. I would love to hear other comments and questions because I'm struggling with this one.
Councillor Corson.
Through you, Deputy Dude, to, I guess it would be Michelle, Miss Banfield. I don't, or maybe it's just a comment. I think that we are new. Some of us are very new around the table, and we're presented with mass development and growth and intensification, and we're trying to muddle our way through with setbacks and understanding development sites and the relationship between developer and city, and with new laws coming down from the provincial government that we're trying to build more homes faster and all the things. I think we really get caught up in all this detail. Where is the community in the builds that we're doing? And I met with the deputant, and we discussed this at length. And I've heard a lot about this. This is absolutely doable. This is absolutely feasible. It's done in a lot of places. And we're sitting with a blank canvas and a place that we can actually create something that in 50 years from now, we're not going to be saying, oh, gee, I was the one on that council that did that big block of cement that's at the corner there. I don't know where we are legally. I don't know if we're so far down the pipeline that we can't turn around. If we can turn around, I want to turn around. We need to build something that's community-oriented for the future, and I have a real problem with the lack of connection and the lack of community that we're developing in these sites. I am all for up, not out. I want density, so I don't crave over forests and farmland. But its density is good if you do it right. And we can do it right here, and if it's too late at this point, which I swear, like, I hope it is not. What steps can we take moving forward to ensure that this won't happen again in our area? If we have a development, if we have this, like, is there any zoning? Is there anything that we can put in that can create this type of idea moving forward through zoning laws through the city? Or I guess, sorry, Michelle, through you, Deputy Mayor, to Ms. Banfield, is there anything that we can do moving forward if we can't save this?
Ms. Banfield, just before you answer, if I could just remind members of council, look, we're getting into the debate. We've had 3 members. The questions are only directed to the deputant
Okay,
in clarification. And that was, but as clarification, you guys got into a little bit of the debate and the back and forth. The questions should be directed about the deputant, like
Okay.
the deputation, sorry, of the deputant.
So at this point, we are not to engage staff at this point?
You can ask.
Okay, just for clarification.
Yeah, but it's more about what Mr. Busch had presented.
Okay, with this exact, what is in front of us?
His deputation.
With what is
Thank
in
you.
front of us. Okay, so yeah, I just would like to lend my voice then, backing up the bus. I would like to lend my voice to others around the table to actually take a serious look at this before we make a mistake that we might regret in the future.
Thank you. I have Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Busch. And I'm looking at the 2 different proposals that you've got that show on the one slide there. And you spoke about how obviously you're not against high density, however, really believe that this urban village piece needs to be built into that. Now, obviously, when you look at the urban village, you're not dealing with the same density that we're talking about here. So I'm just trying to really understand what you're trying to portray to council tonight. Is it to get rid of all these towers and create maybe a 6 to 10 story urban village? Or what, because it hasn't been clear to me anyway as to what piece of this is going to be your urban village that you would like to see. And then also too, I think we also have to keep in mind that the city doesn't own this land. It's owned by a private developer. And obviously that's why it was good to hear that you've had some conversations with them. But maybe if you can just explain that a little bit better so that way we can fully understand how this urban village is going to build into possibly some of these towers or maybe none of these towers as to what your vision actually is.
Thank you. I think it would be easier if we could see that slide again, the current slide, if that's possible. It'd be easier to describe with the visual.
Is that the comparable?
The second, yeah, that one's fine. Thank you. So normally an urban village would kind of be a bowl. It would get higher. Well, it can actually go either way. In Europe, they tend to be denser in the center, the higher stuff. They could only build 5 stories once upon a time, so they build 5 stories, have the square in the center, and then slope away. Okay. In this instance, it's a smaller property, and it's actually easier to have the big density along the main arterial roads and the highway. It's easier to do that and then to come down into a people space in the center, much like this did in the first rendition, and it's still viable in the second rendition. So if you look at kind of the 2 long buildings that are surrounded by the 3 towers to the left-hand side on the right-hand photo. So at the very left of the right-hand photo, there's 2 buildings that are side by side. That kind of would be the core of the urban village, and the spillover around it, where that area might be 5 stories, but all that area, everything facing it and moving down the road a little bit would all be 1st floor retail, 2nd floor offices, so that it's activated on the main street. So it could blend into this development. It just needs to be allocated for it versus it all just being strictly, elevated living boxes.
Great, thank you. And if I could just have one more follow-up, Deputy Mayor. Just curious, was it just one meeting that you had with the developer?
I haven't any. I've reached out a few times. I've offered to get together, connect, talk to the architects, do whatever, describe it, and I just put on hold, and then nothing. Then I reached out again after the last session and nothing back.
Okay.
So we haven't had any real communication at all.
Okay, sounds good. So obviously you really didn't have a meeting then is what I'm getting there.
Would love to have had
and obviously too, I can't fault the developer. They own the land, you don't,
Right.
we don't, so.
Yeah, I don't question profit motive. Profit's good.
Yeah.
It builds a whole bunch of things, but profit at the sake of the city, not so good.
Great, thank you.
We can have it all.
Councillor Reitman.
Just wanted to ask Mr. Busch, so that I'm clear, your suggestion, I thought I heard you say, was that the access road would be on the outside of the buildings, if you will. Is my impression correct?
Yeah, that's another component of it. Great urban villages are pedestrian. Okay, some places they road share a little bit, but the great ones are pedestrian, and that's where they're moving forward. Seaside Florida has gone back on it now, making what wasn't pedestrian, fully pedestrian, now fully pedestrian. So that road that goes in between is going to be a highway. You know, we're talking 8,000 to 10,000 people here. That's the road. It's a highway. Okay, we can swing that out to the 400 and along Essa and create pedestrian, walkable, livable areas where people can be on the street and it can be nice and it can have shopping and people can have the townhouses like they're describing on a place where highways not flying through the middle of it. So it makes way more sense in design. And you know, maybe that's just something that got built in because it was easier to get to the interior row of buildings by putting it through the middle because they weren't there before. So, but they can be serviced from the other side. So it seemed like they went the path of least resistance on the design, but I don't see why they couldn't do it on the outside, make a much nicer built environment for everybody.
And just to follow up, Deputy Mayor, to Ms. Banfield, you've heard the discussion that we just had about the location of the road. Does this approval, or this CHIA approval, would it affect that? Could we later on come back and say, oh, well, we want the road to be along the highway? Or once this gets approved, is that off the table?
Through you, Deputy Mayor Thompson, to Councillor Rietma, with the request that the draft plan come back to the City of Barrie for approval, that would be where we could look at road placements and blocks of where the buildings are. So I would believe that there'd be some flexibility in some of the compartmentalizing of the lots, if that makes sense, in terms of like what a draft plan of subdivision would look like.
Just to follow up on that, when you look at the map that's attached to the draft order, it zones all the land along the highways for 45-story buildings, or 145 meters, I think it was. And then it doesn't zone where they're proposing the road. So I'm kind of wondering, does the bylaw that would eventually, or the order that would eventually issue, would it not have to be changed in order to move the road?
Through you, Deputy Mayor Thompson, to Councillor Rietma, I'll take a look at it again, but typically we don't zone roads anyhow. We zone the entire property, so that might have just been more like a mapping piece, because we usually zone the whole property, and if there's roads in between it, we don't zone. There's no road zone, I guess. So we could definitely take a look at that.
But I guess when all's said and done, if the minister were to approve this CHIA, the owner would be entitled to, 100, and I forget now, the 145-meter buildings and a zero setback here, and the setbacks and the height would all be fixed. Is that correct?
Through you, Deputy Mayor Thompson, to Councillor Rietma, the correct things like the height and building height, those types of things would be covered in the zoning order, the CHIA order.
And just my final one, when I read your report, it seemed to me that what you had dealt with in that report was the public circulation and the public comments that we got had nothing to do with the planning design or anything like that.
Through you, Deputy Mayor Thompson, to Councillor Rietma. So the circulation and consultation requirements for a CHIA are prescribed through the minister, which is the ability to receive public comments and to have Indigenous consultation. And staff's practice and the two samples have been to just bring that back to council.
Councillor Harris.
Great, thank you, Deputy Mayor Thompson. And thank you, Mr. Busch. And I can confirm that efforts to speak with the developer have been made. I know that, because we've had that together, so thank you for that. I just want to be clear, and you showed, and actually credit to Councilor Morales, because he explained last time we were here that it was this density, now it's this density, next time it could be more density, which you've advocated for tonight. You're saying that based on where it was to where it is, you would like to see more density. And am I correct that you would then put it more on the perimeter? So ideally you would want to put, say right now where you chose to exclude the park, which I can tell you, or the school, which is a really favorable element for the residents who back onto Campbell Avenue. They are very excited about that. So you've excluded that. So is that because you would put height backing onto Campbell Avenue to create that ring of density around the outside?
No, I'm saying, through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm saying that I'm not opposed to more density, but we have to take the cars off the road and create a quality of life there. And we do that by creating jobs, entertainment, shopping, all that kind of stuff in a place where people don't have to own a car. So I'm not a proponent of more density. I'm saying we can do more density, and I wouldn't be against that if we found clever ways through the urban village and an enhanced transportation network in order to remove car trips out of this location. Like, we're talking $1.5 million. By doing an urban village, we're going to save $1.5 million car trips a year out of this fairgrounds.
Thank you. And maybe that's my next question. And I really appreciated the booklet. And again, this is Ward 8 residents right now are very happy with the idea of backing onto a park or a school. That is an outcome that hasn't been to their favor before. So what I wanted to see, and I look at your pictures and they're great. However, I'm seeing 2 Gulf Coast planned communities in Florida. I don't see the density anywhere close, and to be even more dense, as far as an example, to give me a picture. They're beautiful pictures and they're attractive, but they set this expectation. I see vacation villages like Blue Mountain. I see historical 14th century cities like Bordeaux, France. So, and Sonoma, California, wine country. So again, trying to paint a reasonable picture. We're here in central Ontario. And I can tell you, and you've made the point, and Councilor Morales is right, people have seen density, density plus, and you're saying more density. So I know there's some concern about going even further, which you're suggesting, but that's not the direction I think where people are wanting to go, and it's creating some concern. So, you know, I can't see the density in the examples you provided. Is there something I'm missing?
Yeah, and really hard to get pictures of proper urban villages. Very challenging, okay? But urban villages are about creating a calm community space with people places in the center, so that there's ground level activations, there's patios, there's storefronts, there's restaurants, there's places where community gathers, pocket parks. I'm become a huge fan of pocket parks. Parks don't have to be huge. I've heard the presentation from Parks and Rec and how difficult it is to maintain all of our parks with the budgets. And so the density would probably be in, the easiest path is 5 stories, where they're showing 2 and 3 story, some of the 2 and 3 story townhomes. So you go up to 5 stories, but you're creating some space in between them. Instead of people having yards, they're communal spaces with pedestrian areas that would have pocket parks and playgrounds and people spaces like patios and that sort of thing.
Great, thank you. And
maybe a refuge.
Yeah, because I think you mentioned one of the email exchanges, one of the examples was Central Park being a really positive feature of New York City, which we can all agree has density and height. So thank you for your deputation. I appreciate the time and all the efforts going into this, so thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Mr. Busch, is there anybody else that would? I'll say this, so thank you for your deputation. I look at Park Place, right? Urban Village, adding residential, right? Lots of cars, right? So if you have retail, business, they're going to add big high rises in the middle. It's going to create lots of cars. So, you know, to Councillor Harris's point, you know, we get snow. I know we've had a pretty mild winter, but urban villages are great, but I don't know many people sitting out in, you know, the Spanish Stairs in 2 feet of snow.
Right.
It's, so, like, I understand. And look, we've talked lots and stuff, and maybe just one question to Ms. Banfield, but thank you for that. The process of the CIHA brings the ministries together to give direction to the development, and it creates the zoning. But we, with an amendment last week, bumped site plan approvals to council back, which, to Mr. Busch's point, erode some of the minor the density would be set out in the zoning, but the developer could change the plan and decrease or shift a building is that my understanding?
Through you, to you, sorry, Deputy Mayor Thompson. So through the amendment last week, the request was that the minister not approve anything other than the zoning, and that the site plan and the draft plan of subdivision would come back to the city of Barrie, not necessarily council because things are delegated, but back to the city of Barrie. That's the way, and for sure, there could be changes to the subdivision, and we don't actually have site plan details for every single building. Presumably every single building you see on there would actually have a site plan agreement for each building, so we don't have those details right now.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Busch, as always, thank you for your deputation.
Thank you. Thank you.
I now call Norman Speake, representing the Barrie Curling Club. On your way down, I first want to say thank you for your time today. We had a very good meeting with a couple of councilors, and taking time out of your day to try to come up with a great solution. I appreciate that. So thank you. I didn't want to take your 5 minutes with that speech, so I didn't want to.
Student Mayor Miller, Deputy Mayor Thompson, councilors, staff, thank you for the opportunity to come forward and address this forum this evening. I'd like to reiterate that the Barrie Curling Club is not opposing any development. It's not opposing this development. It has no opinions with respect to the density of this development or the form. The Barrie Curling Club is not opposed to expediting this development. We understand the requirement for housing. We understand that it's urgent, and yes, let's get on with it. We do, however, reserve some concerns with respect to this very new CIHA process and what it will mean for the city of Barrie once submitted to the province and returned. I'll get back to that in a minute. I'm disappointed to report at this time, again, that the developer and the BCC have yet to come to an agreement with respect to the BCC situation and its position in the development going forward. There remain a number of issues yet to be fully addressed and resolved, not the least of which, but not solely, the footprint. The footprint as shown on the developer's master plan up here, and whether or not that turns out to be the actuality down the road. The BCC, and thank you, Deputy Mayor Thompson and Councillors Harris and Harvey and the Chief Administrative Officer for speaking to us. The nature of this deputation has evolved significantly from what I thought it was going to be this morning, yesterday, 2 weeks ago. But this should in no way take away from the fact that there's an awful lot that needs to be done to sort this out. The BCC, thank you gentlemen, has received assurances that the Council and by extension the City of Barrie recognizes the value of the curling club to the City of Barrie, is supportive of a continuance of the BCC's contribution going forward, and fully understands the challenges facing the BCC solely as a consequence of this development. We are assured that the city, the council, has a way forward and has identified a methodology whereby they can continue to provide support to the BCC even within the framework of CIHA. And we are assured that there will be enough flexibility when the order comes back from the province, assuming, and if we could put the second slide up there, please, whoever's controlling that, assuming that this is what turns out in terms of zoning, that there will be sufficient flexibility that alterations can be made right up to the 11th hour. We trust in those assurances. Now, I don't want anybody to think that the resolution of the footprint is all we have to do. I mean, there are other issues going forward. The BCC has been a self-supporting nonprofit institution for the last 150 years, approximately. Although at this point, I really would like to recognize and thank the city for their contributions over the last 2 years in support of some capital upgrades that were very necessary for the building. Much appreciated. But on a day-to-day operating basis, we're self-supporting. We'd like to continue that way, but we will not be able to continue that way if we have imposed upon us additional capital expenses up front and ongoing operating costs solely as a result of this development. We understand that this is purely a landlord and tenant matter looking at it from the outside, but we would suggest it's part and parcel of the whole, and it's inextricably entwined with the future and the survival of the Barrie Curling Club. This will require, 37 seconds, go. This will require commitment, imagination, and flexibility on the part of the three significant participants in this, and that is the developer, the Barrie Curling Club, and the city. And the flexibility is sort of paramount. We're all going to have to move forward together, and the sooner we start talking together as a threesome, the better off we're going to be, and the quicker we're going to sort this.
Thank you, sir.
I thank you for your attention. I thank you for your assistance. I look forward to a continuing good relationship between the Barrie Curling Club and the city, and in fact, the developer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speakes, for your deputation. Is there any members of council that would like to speak? Councilor Morales.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Thompson. Thank you for the presentation, Norm. I'll make a joke here. You did great with your 5 minutes. If I had a timer, every time I spoke, it would be horrible. So you did.
My fire and brimstone was a lot longer.
Yeah. And also, just before I get to my question, after the meeting, if you can send me your contact information, if you wish.
I will.
I would have loved to have been part of that meeting. As it's come up tonight a couple of times, there's lots of, I really care about this file, and there's lots of design things and concepts, and I've taken hours of meetings and discussions that I've asked for with Craig Busch and staff on the rail spur and various other things. So I definitely want to be at the table as much as I can, as appropriate. And the reason is, which actually alludes to your point about getting everybody on the same table, having the conversation. Just the fact, I'm not blaming anybody that wasn't at the meeting. I tried searching for information, thinking I had it, I didn't, over a month ago, so that's on me. But the fact that I wasn't at the meeting, I didn't ask you directly, but I was searching for the email. And the fact, so the fact that like we're not, the stakeholders are feeling like some communication isn't occurring, I think speaks to the need to have, like you said, more of a three stakeholder partnership conversation. So my question to you is, you were present for Mr. Busch's presentation a bit ago. How would, and I know you are advocating for the curling club operations. I understand that. That's priority number one. But do you see an urban village and a more community integrated development as something the curling club, as long as the operations things are addressed. So let's assume for the purpose of this question, those things are addressed. Do you see an urban village thing being a net positive for the curling club and a net negative, or no impact in your opinion based on that?
Notwithstanding, I'm pretty quick to express opinions. You've caught me flat-footed. I don't really feel qualified to comment on this. The density of the population around us, once it gets done, can only be a good thing for the curling club. The curling club can only be a good thing for this particular development in that it is providing something of a community hub. It is, however, going to be a horror during construction. I don't know what else I can say. Sorry.
Okay, no, perfect. I appreciate your honest response on that. Thank you.
I will ensure that you get my contact details, and I'd be happy to speak to you or, in fact, anyone else. And I'd like to remind you all that March the 9th, this coming Saturday, is open house at the Curling Club. To the extent that I don't see you all there, I will be disappointed.
Councillor Harris.
Great. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Thompson. And thank you, Mr. Speake. And it was a pleasure to meet with you and the group today, and I appreciated the idea and invitation by Mr. Marquis to have us together, and certainly Deputy Mayor Thompson having been there. And Councillor Harvey, you took the time to attend the December 11th meeting that we were all invited to when you were here last time, and I attended, so I appreciated you having us back to have a meeting to discuss this further. And just for people's comfort, we didn't discuss urban villages, we didn't discuss design, we discussed the matters that were specifically important and germane to the curling club. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. So is there something, and we've talked, and again, Councillor Harvey and I made the time to go to the meeting with the full team from Greenworld there and the curling club there. Is there something moving forward, and we talked about how this will ultimately come back to the city and the issue of parking being a key issue for the curling club. Is there something we can do in the next month or so as this effort to connect and communicate and really collaborate to move forward with the curling club and Greenworld? Is there a role we can play to help with that happening again? Because we certainly would like to do that.
Absolutely, sir. We're trying to organize the next meeting between ourselves and Greenworld, and in fact, Mr. Windle and I spoke about that today. Greenworld is unable to support a meeting tomorrow. We are unable to support a meeting on the 14th. I have suggested the week following, or even the week following that, and I have suggested in my last communication to Greenworld, which was in fact this afternoon, that representatives from City Council may wish to attend. It would certainly be welcome to attend on our part and welcome to contribute. I would hope, sir, in a like manner that you contributed today. I thought that was fabulous today.
Great, thank you, and so did I. And just maybe one further question, based on our discussions today, which I thought as well were fabulous. From our conversation today, it sounded like it was pretty clear that the city getting parkland very near the curling club was a potential advantage for the curling club. Is that correct that came out today?
Yes, it is. It is going to provide, or potentially going to provide, flexibility in making minor alterations to what is being proposed by the developer, and we welcome that. And we would be flexible, and I'm trusting that the assurances we received are in fact correct, that we will have that flexibility.
Great, thank you. And I really appreciated you bringing the slide that showed the breakdown of the land as proposed and how much space the park actually is of that property, and then there's the other space that's over by the former DeVilbiss, I call it, factory area, but which is going to be what it'll be, and we hear there might be opportunities for that to be more than what it is. So
I think, yes, I think...
Sorry, I wasn't finished, just waiting for that conversation to stop, sorry. Sorry, go ahead, yeah.
I think as we discussed today that there are things that we can do which will alleviate the situation with respect to the footprint. I don't think we necessarily have to be too far away on that. But there are a couple of things that are going to have to be sorted, and they can only be done if there are three parties sitting at the table, but they can be done relatively quickly if the parties approach this with an open mind and flexibility. Once again, there are other issues which we will address once we've sorted a footprint.
Great. Thank you very much. That's all.
Councillor Reba.
Thank you for coming, Mr. Speake. And I'm going to ask the developer the same question I'm going to ask you. If council were to approve this tonight, do you think that the interests of the curling club would be damaged or set back in any way? I recognize this is largely a landlord-tenant situation, but I don't want to have the city sort of influence the situation one way or the other. So is it your view that if we approve this, what is your view if we approve this tonight? Will it affect your position?
Boy, loaded question, that. I don't understand enough of the CIHA process to be absolutely 100% assured that we're not closing doors. And the reason I say that is I'm not entirely sure that the people in the provincial government who were charged with executing this process fully understand the process. We have attempted to make inquiries and get a full understanding of this, and we do have volunteers with the background, the training, the abilities to understand this. I have been assured today that should the boundaries as defined by the developer in their CIHA application relating to the curling club, should they need to move, then we will still be able to do that after the zoning comes back from the province. I can only go by the assurances that I've been provided, sir.
Mr. Speake, thank you for your deputation. And I do want to say I appreciate sitting here for the first time and stuff, but I've sat over there for, 6 years, and a lot of people try to answer questions they don't know the answer to. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate your honesty saying that you're not in the position to answer those questions just to try to muddy the waters. So from where I'm sitting, that means a lot, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will now move on to the third and final deputation, and I will now call on Ryan Windle of behalf of Greenworld Construction, Inc. to develop your deputation. Welcome. You have 5 minutes as the other deputants.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Thompson. If maybe IT could bring up that master plan, I appreciate Mr. Speake providing that drawing. We didn't have to provide a duplicate, so it might be helpful to have that up for us. I'll try and get through my statements as quick as possible. Certainly here to answer questions, try to provide some feedback based on some of the deputations that have been made tonight. But I will say good evening, again, Deputy Mayor Thompson, members of council, staff, members of the public. For your reference, my name is Ryan Windle. I'm VP of Land Development for Greenworld, Inc. We're the applicant. I did want to take this opportunity to appear tonight to thank staff and council for their work on this file and indicate that we support the motion to forward our zoning to the province for consideration through the CIHA process. And that's a good reminder. That's what is being asked of council tonight, is to ratify that committee recommendation to simply send the zoning up for consideration. I think staff would clarify that too, or has clarified. The zoning is not being done tonight. It's just to send it up through the CIHA process. And I do want to say with as much passion as I can, with this plan, we believe in this project. It has the potential to contribute over 4,000 units to Barrie's housing stock in an area that is designated as a strategic growth area, an intensification corridor, and is in close proximity to one of Barrie's major transit station areas, obviously the Allendale GO Station. We believe the project addresses a number of strategic priorities, which makes it a win-win for us, the city, and the province. It addresses the provincial housing initiative, 1.5 million homes by 2031. I think council is very familiar with that. Certainly, City of Barrie's housing pledge, 23,000 units by 2031. We contribute to that, roughly 17% through this proposal. We believe it provides critical mass, an area that's designated for high-density development, which supports affordable housing, transit expansion, and pedestrian-friendly communities. It does address council's stated priorities, such as encouraging a range of housing options to make housing attainable, expand and maximize access to parks and recreation opportunities, support active transportation and pedestrian connections, and advocate to other levels of government for support all identified priorities by this council. And it would be remiss if I didn't mention, it also includes the redevelopment of a brownfield, which I think is very important to both the city and the province. I would like to highlight, and there's been some discussion about our original proposal and now our current proposal. We submit that our latest submission, we have listened to the comments that we have received to date. We take that to heart, whether it was one round of comments from some of the city departments and certainly the public comments. In response to those, we've scaled back some of the height. We've now included 50 Wood Street as entirely green space. We've increased the amount of commercial to 5,000 square meters and concentrated the retail at the street, essentially fronting Essa Rd. And in response to some of Mr. Busch's comments, I will note that yellow color that you see on this map generally represents a mixed-use zoning. So that offers opportunity for not only residential but street-level commercial. We believe this program or this project is extremely pedestrian-friendly. The street that's provided is a public street that provides a 23-meter right-of-way based on recommendations from staff, and that offers the opportunity to provide sidewalks on both sides of the street. We anticipate that each building will have street-level activity, whether it's residential use, an amenity space, or again, critical retail commercial on Essa Rd, which is your identified intensification corridor. That's exactly where it's planned to go. We've located the highest density and the tallest buildings at the farthest point from the existing neighborhood. And based on some of the discussions and past committee recommendations, we've incorporated the school block. And if not used as a school, it would be a park. With that being said, approximately 40% of the property is now identified as either open space or school, not including our private amenity spaces, an additional park space that might be included as part of the townhouse development next to the school block. So we've listened to that and provided responses in our design. I will remind Council that our plans have been created by experienced planners, engineers, and an internationally renowned architect that has significant experience in designing similar scale developments. We certainly believe in this plan at this stage to provide at least a proof of concept for the zoning, and that's what this is. This will evolve over time. There are future applications that will come along that will deal with design.
Thank you. Sorry. Mr. Windle.
If I could conclude by saying, not to put words in staff's mouths, but typical subdivision processes allow opportunity for urban design briefs, urban design reports, architectural control designs to be part of the conditions. So that would be part of the later process. I would like... Okay.
Sorry, there's lots of people who think developers get the upper hand and stuff, so I just don't. Yeah, it's not fair. Our deputants were cut off at 5 minutes. I got to hold you to that. I apologize. Okay. So, thank you.
Okay. I will take questions and certainly provide additional comment through the questions.
First, I have Councillor Corson, please.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, to our guest. Do you want to, after reviewing Vision Barrie's presentation, do you feel that this, as presented today fulfills the definition of a urban community?
Through your chair to the councillor, short answer is yes, in that we've provided a concept plan at this point that is supported by detailed planning justifications, both the original reports and the submission that was made with the CIHA request. Our professional planner, us as the developer, believe that this is good planning. It provides opportunity for good design. Again, reminding council that this is a concept plan to provide proof of concept for the zoning at this point. It will evolve over time. There are other processes, like the subdivision process and the site plan process, that we do support coming back to the municipality to address some of those deep technical designs. And I would also indicate that, sure, we will review through whatever process there is any comments, any submissions that are made, whether it's through directly to the province, if this goes up through the CIHA process, or if it was the typical development application process, we would take in that review and those comments, like for Mr. Busch, and consider that. But we believe in this plan. It's again, a concept that is, we put a lot of thought into it, a lot of design thought, and we really believe that it provides at least the beginning opportunity for a great plan that would ultimately be delivered for the city of Barrie.
And the conversation that happened around the table, I guess, I don't want to get out of scope because I appreciate that we are talking only about zoning this evening. But when or if this comes all back around, I am really looking forward to having those deep discussions about how we can develop a really forward-thinking, future-thinking, community-based development on this site. Thank you.
Councillor Reba, and then I have Councillor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I have three questions. And the first one is the same one that I asked Mr. Speake. If council does approve this tonight, do you, and I recognize it's a landlord-tenant matter, but do you feel that either you or the curling club would be prejudiced in some way if we were to approve this tonight?
Through you, Deputy Mayor Thompson. Prejudice, I guess that's a difficult term to rectify in my mind. I sort of mulled the answer around in my mind. We firmly believe that the issue with the curling club is a lease issue. Again, tonight is simply sending a zoning request up to up to the province. Zoning lines, even if they were created tonight, wouldn't determine exactly what the block configurations are. That happens through the subdivision process. And again, not speaking for staff, but my understanding certainly is that those zoning lines ultimately would follow block lines or right-of-way lines. That's the interpretation. That's how zoning works. So no, I don't believe that this action prejudices our ability to work with the curling club, as we have done over the last number of months. Many submissions back and forth, many meetings. We think that we can work out, hopefully, the lease items and not being prejudiced by the zoning process continuing forward.
Second question is, are these apartment buildings that you're proposing here, are they condominium or rental or a mix?
We are in the business, through you, Chair Thompson, or Deputy Mayor Thompson, we are in the business of building condominiums. This is what our plan is right now. As we get deeper into the process, we may consider other tenures, but I would remiss if I indicated to council that we were in the business of purpose-built rentals. We are not. So we anticipate these to be condos of many different sizes, different types, There's a number of different built forms that we're proposing that sort of gets to the issue of choice and potentially keeping prices in check and providing opportunity for many different ways of living. But no, we are not in the business of undertaking purpose-built rental. That's not the indication at this point.
Okay, thank you for that. And my final question is, what percentage of these units do you expect to be affordable?
Through you, Deputy Mayor Thompson. Again, thank you for the question to the councillor. That's a very difficult question for me to answer today because there's many thoughts on how we determine affordability. Our proposal is, again, to provide different types of built forms, different size of units, different price points. That creates an affordability. Certainly adding to supply creates prices or helps to keep prices in check. We haven't identified any specific percentage of affordability, but that's partly because we don't necessarily fully understand what that affordability number would be. I've certainly done some research with the municipalities programs. There's through the new strategy that's been released recently, there's discussion of the 400,000 point being an affordable number. But I understand the province is still working on a document that they're to issue that would clarify what the affordability thresholds are. So, our estimation right now is, again, just simply providing that mix of uses and tenures and types of units. There's not a specific percentage of affordability being identified. Again, that's hard to define what that is.
Thank you. Members, just a reminder. The CIHA has the opportunity to come back with 2 school boards, which would change the buildings because it would request 12 acres. So to ask, in all fairness, right, if we reduce the area that's developable due to the school boards would change everything. So I just want to make it clear that, the developer has given an answer that to the best of his ability, but remember the CIHA is to determine whether that could be 2 school boards or just the park or a single school board. So and I appreciate your answer, but this is zoning, the application.
No, thank you,
Councillor.
and through you, Deputy Mayor Thompson, and thanks for that reminder as well. So it was my understanding, I think the impetus behind the CIHA for me was because of the issue with the school boards, right? They're requesting, 12 acres, and the developer's only providing 6, and so that was the main issue. We have to take this to the ministry so that they can figure out how to proceed with the land for the school. So given that, I'm just wondering your opinion. It seems to me that going through the CIHA process, in one hand, yes, we need it because we need the government ministry to decide what to do with the school issue, but then we're also giving up some control. And so in your perception, is it of more value to be going through the CIHA process and getting, direction from the ministry when it comes to this zoning for the school boards, but giving up a certain level of control because, again, they're going to dictate height and restrictions. They could come back with something completely different. So what's the thought from the developer's perspective on that?
Sure, through Deputy Mayor Thompson to the councillor. Those are a couple of things I had in my presentation in terms of acknowledging that giving up local control is a trade-off in this particular instance, because yes, I believe through some discussions with staff and whatnot, I think we do believe that this CIHA allows for the balancing of all the provincial interests from the school to affordability to the relationship to transit and the MTO and Highway 400, balancing all of those issues. We do believe that this new CIHA process being available does provide, in this instance, an excellent opportunity to try and balance all of those provincial interests. Understanding again that the municipality had some interest in that too. I've heard some comments from the mayor and others that's a driving force. So, I would be remiss again if I said, if this was a local process, we'd be glad to continue to hammer away with staff and ultimately come up with a recommendation report. But in the discussions that we've had, balancing all the interests, we certainly believe that the CIHA process provides this unique opportunity. But it does come with a little bit of trade-off, and it's a little bit of a risk for us too, because honestly, we don't know what the province will say. But we are putting our best foot forward. We've written a draft zoning bylaw that provides a starting point for the province. It's based on a proof of concept, which you see the master plan, you see some of the elevations. It's deep design. In fact, I might suggest it's greater design level that you might get on your typical zoning applications. Long story short, there's trade-offs, but we believe that it could be a process that would prove beneficial to both us and the municipality.
Okay, thank you. And I don't know if anyone can answer this, but we have no idea from a timeline perspective. There's no timelines that government, no, I'm seeing shaking of heads, so we have no idea. This could be 6 months or 6 years before we hear a response. Hopefully not 6 years, but I just know how government works, and I'm interested to see the timeline for this. And just my final question, again, as a developer, I know you don't owe anybody any time, and I'm sure you get requests all the time from residents to meet and have input and perspective. But I do, hearing Mr. Busch present tonight and understanding that he is passionate about the city and the vision of Barrie, and the developer doesn't live in the community. The developer's not going to live in this complex. So, I do appreciate when residents in the city have input, who have expertise, and I just wonder, is there a willingness from the developer to meet with Mr. Busch going forward to really look at how can we make sure we're incorporating as much of the urban design elements as possible? You mentioned that you've got a variety of expertise, and I bet you do, but we have a local expert with a local passion here as well, and that I think has, gained some respect around this table, and I think it certainly would go a long way to have a meeting. 15-minute meeting. I don't think it's too much to ask, so I do hope maybe there's a willingness there going forward.
Through Deputy Mayor Thompson to the councillor. Yes, the short answer is yes. I think Mr. Massoud has shown his willingness to meet with key interested parties. I have not met with Mr. Busch myself. We certainly divide our labor up a little bit, but as we go, glad to meet with critical interested parties that have some information to offer, understanding that we'll try and address those items through whatever process is available. And again, if this goes up to the province, well, then there's some discussion at the provincial level about the zoning and how that occurs, but then how the rest of the process occurs and how you can build in some of this commentary about urban design and architectural design and other deeper technical items.
Councillor Morales.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Thompson. Councillor Hamilton, you stole one of my questions. Will you meet with Craig Busch? And listen, it's the uniqueness. Also, I challenge you to have a 15-minute meeting with Craig Busch. And that's not an insult, that's a compliment. And I think the fact that, this is a big file. You have to meet with lots of people. I get that. So I don't want to throw any shade at that or insult. And I think what you're hearing tonight is you're seeing a lot of passion that we have to get it right. There's been so many people fighting to make sure it gets done right. And I'll be remiss if I don't say this, because it should be said. There's 11 of us, and we all own the vote. But he gets the phone calls. I get to say the sound bites. He gets to deal with the follow-up. So, that is something that needs to be highlighted on this file. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. But I do want to address some questions, because, again, I haven't had a chance to meet you, so nice to have you here. My Councillor Corser had my colleague, Councillor Corser, you're not my councillor. My colleague, Councillor Corser, had a great question. After having seen Craig's vision, is there anything you'd change? Now, I didn't expect you to say yes, and I loved your answer. But that said, there was one specific line you said, and I'm putting you unfairly in the spot. There is a question, a very important question at the end of this. With all due respect, you said there's been lots of detailed planning justification. With all due respect, and this is not your file, I've seen, and this is public information, I've seen a detailed planning justification report justifying, with a signature and designation at the end of it, trying to justify a one-story, multi-drive-through business, brand new, not built yet or approved, on Bayfield Street, where intensification and height should happen. And they're trying to justify new drive-throughs, and not a reconstruction, not the KFC, a brand new drive-throughs with Bayfield frontage right at the road. And they literally signed it and said, this is good planning for the city of Barrie. So, now, it wasn't a planner from Barrie that signed it. They did it out of their GTA office. Maybe that's why. I don't know. I'm going to finish that with I don't know so I don't get sued. But specifically, having heard vision and ideas from Craig Busch, who is not a planner, is there an opportunity to maybe address issues such as the bisecting road, for example? That road bisects the buildings from the lower density, so you have more instances of interactions with cars and pedestrians. And the reason I bring that one up is with the CHIA that happened in my ward earlier, I brought that up to the applicant at the time and I said, you have a little parquet that you want people to use, but you're running the main road that feeds the two buildings. Don't run the road between the building and the parquet. Have the parquet attached to the building, have the road elsewhere. And they changed it. They changed it, but before we got to the CHIA, actually Ms. Banfield sent the email like 2 days beforehand and said, there's actually some changes done. So are there opportunities, maybe not before tonight, because this is where we are, but are there opportunities for the applicant to take some of the feedback, whether it's from members of council, the community, or Mr. Busch, and make some of those alterations while it's with the province?
Through Deputy Mayor Thompson to Councilor Morales. Again, short answer is yes. Again, we have to, I haven't scrutinized, or planners haven't scrutinized deeply, say, Mr. Busch's suggestions, but there's some value to them, and urban design and streetscape and an appropriate layout of streets and blocks is a typical discussion as part of plans of subdivision. So short answer, we'd be glad to consider as it goes up to the province, if it does, to identify if there are any revisions, and we're already doing that, right? We're already considering other comments, other issues. We've shown our good faith. We've shown our ability to try and be a partner in this, to already have taken an original plan and made some changes that address the initial round of comments. So like any planning application, we would take in that feedback, and reminding that city staff ultimately will be writing or making approvals for subdivisions and site plans. There'll be an ability to affect those processes. And Councilor Morales, while I have you, I certainly will say to you, we understand the magnitude, and I think even me personally, having spent a number of years here at the City of Barrie, the importance of the Barrie Fairgrounds and how long it's remained vacant. So we want to get it right too. And what we're trying to do is at every step, give the best possible information with the best possible justifications to move us to the next step. And in this case, it's not a working back and forth on resubmissions and coming forward with a staff report like you typically have for zoning and subdivision. It's getting it to the province and then getting to what they may or may not approve based on the feedback and the requests and the motions by council.
I appreciate your comprehensive response there. One of my other questions is the applicant open to being flexible on things that may be outside that would create variances? And I'll give you a specific example. So right now, city's policy, it's not the applicant, but our policy says that our mixed use and our ground floor retail has to be activated towards the intensification corridor. This is a unique site, because usually of sites, you just have little slivers of like houses, maybe a corner, but on this one, the activation towards Essa Rd for the retail would be kind of weird, because let's be honest, 8 to 10 lane Essa Rd is not exactly a place where we want to go for a stroll. So we wouldn't want to go to a restaurant or an activation of a pharmacy or something. However, this is a unique situation where actually activating the retail inward towards a potential future village can have the activation that benefits a curling club, that benefits your bottom line, that benefits our long-term residents. However, you just created a variance. Because now you're deviating away from our policy mandated, so that's on us. But if there was a willingness from council, 6+ votes, working with staff, is that something that technically creates another variance in your table? And I know applicants like to see less
Councilor
yellow
Morales,
on those tables.
this is a site plan question. Like, and Mr. Windle, you're asking him to answer questions on the fly here. Like, but this is a zoning application to the CHIA. We're now asking for variances and all that stuff, which is site plan. So, just out of curiosity, do you know how long that this process has started?
In what sense?
Like
Sorry,
from day one, when you took over the property and submitted your first application?
We're coming up December 2022, so year and a half almost 2
Can
years.
you answer one question for me? How many calls did you get last week from Wednesday till today from members of council?
I didn't get any personally.
Perfect. Let's stay on topic, please. That's a site
Sorry,
plan.
your question, we don't have his number. I think it's been established that, like, we don't have contact with him, so the point you're trying to prove isn't really a point.
No, but we're asking site plan questions, right? It's like, the application come at general committee last week, and now we're asking for this gentleman to change his site plan at council.
I didn't ask him that.
You were asking him
No, I
about
was saying a
variances
future
and stuff.
opportunity.
That's site plan. This is zoning, stick to zoning.
Okay.
Thank you.
If I may, I apologize if I'm interjecting here a little bit, but I think, again, zoning, Councilor Morales, just to remind you, the zoning for those areas is set up to be mixed use. So then it just becomes a detailed design element to determine how to orient the retail. I think we've done enough detail review to understand the grades and the widths that we have available facing Essa, that it would present an opportunity for pedestrian level connectivity. But thank you, Deputy Mayor Thompson, but the zoning does address that. It provides the flexibility to provide commercial in all of those blocks.
And I'll ask you a question. I'm going to clarify why I'm asking the question and then reframe the question in the spirit of zoning, because this one I have lots of experience with. So there was a development proposal for zoning in my ward, and they were asking for zoning. So they wanted to go to 11 stories, and they wanted to be able to build their building and get zoning. They weren't at site plan yet. I don't even think site plan has occurred, Deputy Mayor Thompson. And the thing with zoning was, when they came in, they followed our rules, so kind of like pushing the retail towards the road. And when it was coming forward, I saw kind of a similar issue. I said the activation of, the restaurant is on Yonge Street. I think it should be more on Montgomery. And the response I got from staff is, that's a site plan issue, but if you want a surety that that's going to happen specifically the way you believe it to be, so it's not activated on Yonge Street, which I believe is 8 lanes, then delay the rezoning, get them to do a resubmission with kind of the concept plans that you were alluding to that you've voluntarily provided, or just approve it and take care of it at site plan. So I've been in a situation with zoning where, you're in zoning and you say, trust the process, it'll be done at site plan. But if you get to site plan, there's also a possibility. I'm not saying you're doing it, I'm not saying that applicant's doing it. There's a possibility where you say, well, we're sticking to the standards that the city has provided. So if we don't bring this up during zoning now, what confidence do I get? What confidence do my residents get? What confidence do the people here in the stands get that these things will, if not addressed tonight, because he's not going to pull up a laptop and fix it for us, at least on the record can address. So that's why I'm bringing it up, because I've had an experience of a rezoning, not a site plan, in my ward where these issues, where zoning and site plan do intermingle a bit and coexist. So let me reframe the question for zoning. If there was a will of council to change almost the rules that you have to abide for, even though we're at zoning, is that something that you can reasonably do later during the site plan stage?
Through you, Deputy Mayor Thompson, to Councillor. Yes, I mean, there's any design elements we can consider. Again, I think the operative answer still is, and I'll reiterate myself, the zoning bylaw has been designed with a great deal of flexibility to provide that opportunity within those blocks. So the permission is not an issue. It then becomes, again, trying to work with staff to determine the proper orientation, and if there's some desire to consider activating that bisecting street with some retail, glad to consider that. But at this point, our view is to balance all of the city's interests and the existing policies and the guidance and the direction related to the intensification corridor, which is Essa. We've oriented that 5,000 square meters to Essa Road. That's exactly what the municipality has planned for and wants. And it's then we are doing our part to set the tone. And as future development applications come between our property and the GO station, for example, Essa will be activated that way. That's the priority. That for us, that's a priority. But sure, glad to discuss some of those deeper elements through the other parts of the process. But the zoning would allow it.
Perfect. Thank you for your time.
Councillor Nixon.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I had 2 or 3 questions. 2 of them have already been answered by earlier colleagues. I have one more that I'm going to reach out separately, if I may, in the next day or two and talk to you privately. Because it does involve site plan. It is a little different than what we are talking about, coincidentally. So that's that. Thank you.
Councillor Negussi.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Thompson. So I have a couple questions. If this motion passes tonight and the province expedites the process, how ready are you or your client to put shovel in the ground?
Through you, Deputy Mayor Thompson, to the councillor. We are ready to move as fast as possible through every part of the process that we can. I think we've shown that with staff in terms of our applications, our responses, our resubmission related to this CIHA with some redesigns. We continue our working on our technical reports. We continue to work on 50 Wood Street and the environmental situation regarding that. So my answer is, at each stage, we're willing to go as fast as we can to get through to zoning, to get through to subdivision approval, and ultimately get to blocks that are created that you can start to apply for site plan for. We're committed to that. But we have to get through that process before we even think about marketing and then ultimately construction. But, you know, I think we've shown, and I hope staff would attest to it, that we've shown every good effort to try and keep the process moving, keep our submissions moving, do the proper work that we need to do to answer questions and answer to issues, and ultimately lead to construction as soon as possible. But we have to go through these other parts of the process first.
Follow up, if I may, Deputy Mayor. Thank you. So how long is the construction schedule? And how long before people will be living in the units? And my other question is, do you plan to build all at once or in phases?
Through you, Deputy Mayor Thompson, to the councillor. With a project of this scale, we assume there's going to be certain phasing. For example, there may be the road and the townhouses and the single building fronting onto Essa Rd first. But we haven't fully vetted that. That's something, again, that can be discussed through the subdivision process. Unfortunately, unlike Mr. Massoud, the owner, I don't have that construction schedule sort of mined all the way through. I can certainly try and put my mind to that and answer that for you at a later date, but certainly getting through the provincial zoning process, not sure how long that takes. A few months. We get through the subdivision process in the next year or two. We have to construct roads, services, another year and a half. So you're 4 or 5, 3 to 5 years away from something potentially physically being available for residents, assuming everything goes as smoothly as possible. And we all know, the planning process often isn't as smooth as we hope. But if the process goes smoothly, we're optimistic about trying to get something physically done as soon as we can.
Thanks so much. Thank you for your answer.
I have one more councillor to speak, unless the student mayor would like to chime in at this thing.
No pressure.
Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Thompson. I think we may have set a record for the amount of time for 3 deputations. So on the plus side, we set a record tonight, I think. And thank you. One thing when you, in your introduction, you have contacts to Barrie and then context for this property. I think it's really important. And it was pleasing to hear that you understand Barrie and how this, as you can tell, this is not a Ward 8 property, it's a community property, and as witnessed by Envision Barrie and the curling club and everybody's interest. We all have curling club members across of our wards, and it's just one of those iconic sites for Barrie. So it's great to know that you have a Barrie connection to understand that piece of how it's important. One thing you said, and I just wanted to, again, because I'm the one who represents the folks in the backyard of this property, Campbell, Wood Street, Alfred, you'd mentioned that at present, 40% of the property is either going to be green space or the school or park. And can you say with confidence that that won't go down as this process moves forward? That percentage of open or green space is not going to go down.
Through you, Deputy Mayor Thompson, the answer is we don't anticipate that changing. That comes through certain direction. We are committed to working through with the municipality and the province to deliver on those amenities that have been put forward. We put forward that master plan for that very reason, to show some commitment to the school, and then ultimately the backup plan, which is the park. So we anticipate that to survive.
Wonderful. So from your perspective, there's no initiative that you would be taking that would see that number go down. That's fair to say.
Not at this point.
Thank you. And I appreciated the interest in meeting with Mr. Busch, and I know he's put a great deal of time, effort into this, and I know there's been effort. So I'm pleased to hear you say that you would meet to just discuss, and we've talked about other opportunities to bring the urban village design to the community at large, and we've talked about that as well. So for other sites that may be potential opportunities in Barrie, so there's hope in that as well. I also, we have the curling club members here tonight, and again, I think in the spirit of collaboration, moving forward together, I understand that their hope is to have a meeting in the next 3 weeks or so, just to have that kind of sit down. I get the impression that the parties are close. Is that something, again, that you and your team is willing to do? And if council members are available to attend, would you entertain that idea to have a meeting of the 3 real principal parties to do that?
Through you, Deputy Mayor Thompson, to the councillor, thanks for that question. I appreciate it, because I didn't get a chance to say a great deal about the curling club, but I did touch on it. Again, I think we've shown our commitment, getting to know Mr. Speake and the group very well. We appreciate what their interests are. We're trying to do our best to give them the information that they need to provide us with some feedback. Mr. Speake is correct. We're working on the next meeting. Again, with the reality of trying to stay focused on that lease discussion, which at some point will be a confidential arrangement discussion, but fully willing to have meetings that are open to council members showing up and talking through the issues, and just trying to make sure that we separate that zoning discussion and how the subdivision process works and what we're dealing with the curling club, which is really a private lease, but fully committed to continuing to work with Mr. Speake and his group. I think we've shown that over time.
Great, thank you. And that targeted discussion was something we really were able to do today and focus on the key issues, and I think that effort would be able to be maintained as well. I had one other question, and it was something that came up last week, and so you might not have had a chance to really think on it, but it was a creative amendment that Councilor Morales put forward, which was to investigate the advantage of using the existing rail. And I wondered if there's thoughts, and there's talk about concerns about parking and moving people. We're close to a transit hub. And have you had much chance to think on what that might do for the opportunity for this site to be less car-driven and have different options for moving people around?
Through you, Deputy Mayor Thompson, to the councillor, have not put a great deal of thought into it, but certainly had some internal discussions about the opportunity that it presents. Exactly how it may turn out, there's a lot of, your mind starts to turn to all the technical items that would need to fall into place, but certainly open to that discussion. No issue with the part of the motion that is being directed to your own staff members to investigate, and we'd be glad to be part of those discussions. I think we would acknowledge that anything that provides something innovative like that to provide other modes of transportation other than the car to provide access, that's just good planning in the world that we live in today, and particularly considering the type of development we're proposing, and to say that density supports that discussion. That's exactly one of the reasons why the density is being proposed. So open to that discussion.
Great. Thank you. And the excitement over that, I maybe thought my last question, but my last question is simple. I know there's been discussion about the possibility of this site being even more dense. Am I clear that there's no intention as we stand today with the zoning going, that Greenworld has any intention to make this more dense than it was currently presented?
Right now, through Deputy Mayor Thompson to the councillor, right now our proposal is our proposal. We think it balances the proper mix. I think Mr. Massoud would say if he could have 50 stories, he'd take 50 stories. But that's, again, we've kind of got a sweet spot at this point in time. We're committed to that. We'll see how the discussion goes with the zoning and again, in the future processes. Again, the zoning is fairly flexible with some specific items like height and some building separation being set and some setbacks. But right now, our proposal is what it is, and that's what the density looks like.
Great, so thank you. And maybe just to recap, there's no plan to reduce the open or green space. There's no plan to increase the density. There's an interest in the rail spur, and there's a commitment to meet with the curling club to really get those key items sorted out in the next few weeks or months or whatever it takes. But that commitment is there. Is that fair? A fair summary?
Correct.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. That's it.
We're
That's
good?
all.
That's it?
I can honestly say this. I've never been so sick of hearing my name. But thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Harris.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Harvey, that Section F of the Second General Committee Report dated February 28th, 2024, now circulated, be adopted. And I have an amendment. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Moved by Councillor Harris, second by Councillor Harvey, that Section F of the Second General Committee Report dated February 28, 2024, circulated, be adopted. This is the Community Infrastructure and Housing Accelerator order, for 175, 199 Essa Road and 50 Wood Street. And I believe, Councillor Harris, you have an amendment.
Yes, Deputy Thompson, I do. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Rietma, that motion 24G046 of Section F of the Second General Committee Report dated February 28th, 2024, concerning the Community Infrastructure and Housing Accelerator, Order 175, 199 Essa Road and 50 Wood Street, be amended by adding the following paragraph, paragraph 4, that the Minister's approval order for the CIHA applies only to the existing landowner, Greenworld Construction, Inc., and any affiliates, and is not transferable. And I can speak to that.
Councillor Harris has an amendment, moved by Councillor Harris, second by Councillor Rietma, that motion 24-G046, Section F of the Second General Committee Report dated February 28, 2024, concerning the Community Infrastructure Housing Accelerator order for 175, 199 Essa Road and 50 Wood Street be amended by adding the following paragraph, that the minister approve order for a CIHA applies only to the existing landowner, Greenworld Construction and affiliates. Councillor Harris?
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor Thompson. This one, I believe, is pretty self-explanatory. Certainly, around this table, we often have the challenge with, approving and then things not happening. And so, Greenworld had come forward, asked us to consider a CIHA. So, this simply means that this CIHA will be, if it's approved, how the order is done, it would be Greenworld's and would not be transferred to anybody else. And hopefully that would then clarify for those who are connected and invested that they know what this is and it won't be moved on to somebody else.
Thank you. I'll be really brief. To be honest, I will support this amendment, and for the simple reason, I would love to see this on all of our developments. This would actually stop a lot of the squeezing the lemon and then flipping it. And I think that this would hold developers a little more accountable, that their zoning wouldn't be transferable. And so I will be supporting this. So thank you. I call the vote on the amendment. Those in favor? Those opposed? One opposed. I will call the question. All those in, as the motion as amended, all those in favor? Those Opposed, sorry. Carries.
That was the update from the City Hall. Thank you for watching.